Spain controls half the world's gold, the richest empire on earth. 80 years later, bankrupt, finished, never recovered. Britain rules the largest empire in human history. The sun never sets on British territory. The pound sterling is the global reserve currency. 40 years later, the empire is gone. The Soviet Union, nuclear superpower, global influence, it ceases to exist in 900 days. Not from war, from economic implosion. 3 superpowers, 3 complete collapses. And here's what almost nobody is discussing right now in 2025. The United States has already completed 5 of those 7 stages. We're not approaching the pattern, we're deep inside it. The math has been running for decades. And every single decision we're making is identical to the decisions that destroyed 3 empires before us. This isn't speculation. This is pattern recognition. And the pattern has been right 3 times in a row. By the end of this video, you'll see exactly where we are in the sequence, why stages 6 and 7 are already beginning, and why the acceleration is faster than anyone in power wants to admit. Let's start with what imperial collapse actually looks like. Imperial collapse doesn't start with invasion or military defeat. It starts with something quieter, economic exhaustion. The empire extends beyond its ability to maintain itself. Military commitments in 150 countries, wars on multiple fronts, promises it cannot keep, debts it cannot repay. At first, the decline is invisible. The currency still works. The military still wins battles. The government still makes promises. But beneath the surface, the foundation is cracking. Resources are being misallocated. Productive capacity is shrinking. The best minds are leaving. Then comes the acceleration phase. Allies start hedging their bets. Enemies test boundaries. Trade partners develop alternatives. Reserve currency status begins eroding. And suddenly, all the advantages that made you powerful become vulnerabilities. Your currency, once demanded by everyone, comes flooding back home, causing inflation. Your military becomes financially unsustainable. Your promises become empty. Empty words that nobody believes. This acceleration happened to Spain in the 1600s. It happened to Britain between 1914 and 1950. It happened to the Soviet Union between 1985 and 1991. The timelines compress. Each collapse happens faster than the last. Spain took 80 years. Britain took 40. The USSR took 6. And every single one believed that they were different. Every single one refused to accept reality until collapse was already underway. Let's look at how the pattern actually executed. After Columbus discovered the Americas in 1492, Spain became the first true world power. They conquered the Aztec and Inca empires and seized control of the richest gold and silver mines ever discovered. By 1550, Spanish galleons were bringing home 200 tons of silver per year. By 1600, over 400 tons annually. Spain controlled the money supply of Europe. The Spanish real was the global reserve currency. This is where the pattern begins, with a country that controls the world's money and believes that makes them invincible. King Philip II had more money than any monarch in history, and he spent it on empire. Spain fought wars everywhere simultaneously, against the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean, against France and Italy, against Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, against England's navy, wars in the Philippines, wars in the Americas. By 1580, Spain had military commitments on 4 continents. Half of Spain's revenue went to the military, and still it wasn't enough. The Spanish crown couldn't pay its bills with taxes alone, so they did what every failing empire does. They debased the currency. They started mixing copper into silver coins. A coin that was supposed to be pure silver became 50% copper, then 75% copper. By 1600, Spanish silver coins contained barely any silver. Merchants stopped accepting them at face value. Inflation exploded. Spain borrowed constantly. From Italian bankers, from German bankers, from anyone who would lend. By 1557, Spain declared bankruptcy. They defaulted, restructured, and kept borrowing. They declared bankruptcy again in 1560, again in 1575, again in 1596, 4 bankruptcies in 40 years. Each time they promised reforms, each time they went right back to borrowing and spending. Here's what most people don't understand about Spain's collapse. They had all the gold and silver in the world, and it destroyed them. When you have unlimited money, you stop producing. Why grow food when you can import it? Why build ships when you can buy them? Spanish nobility considered work beneath them. Manufacturing declined. Agriculture stagnated. The gold and silver that came from the Americas went straight back out to pay for French wine, Italian silk, Dutch goods. Spain became a conduit. Wealth flowed through them, but none of it stayed. With the economy failing, crime exploded. Productive citizens emigrated to France, England, the Netherlands, countries that were building and growing. Spain was left with bureaucrats, soldiers, and priests. Nobody creating wealth, everyone consuming it. By 1640, Spain lost Portugal. By 1650, they lost the Netherlands. By 1700, the Spanish Empire was economically dead. They went from world superpower to secondary power in less than a century and never recovered. At its peak in 1900, Britain controlled 25% of the world's land surface, 400 million subjects. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. Every major trade contract was denominated in pounds. London was the financial center of the world. And just like Spain 300 years earlier, they believed it was permanent, but the pattern was already running. By 1900, Britain had military commitments everywhere. India, Africa, the Middle East, China, the Pacific, the Caribbean. They had to defend territory on 6 continents. When World War I started in 1914, Britain faced a choice: stay neutral or bankrupt the empire to win. They chose to fight. World War I cost Britain over $40 billion, $1 trillion in today's money. They borrowed mostly from the United States. By 1918, Britain owed America billions. The creditor had become the debtor. The war had drained Britain's gold reserves. By 1920, Britain's gold reserves were half what they'd been in 1914, but they tried to maintain the pound's value anyway. They went back on the gold standard at the pre-war rate in 1925. The problem? The pound was overvalued. British exports became too expensive. Manufacturing declined. Unemployment rose. By 1931, they couldn't hold it anymore. Britain abandoned the gold standard. The pound lost 25% of its value overnight. The global reserve currency had just admitted it couldn't keep its promises. Britain never recovered from World War I debt. And then World War started. Another $120 billion in costs. More borrowing from America. By 1945, Britain owed the United States and Canada over $30 billion, more than Britain's entire GDP. The war was won, but the empire was finished. In 1947, Britain gave up India, the crown jewel, the source of wealth for 200 years. Gone. Over the next 20 years, they lost everything. Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean. By 1970, the British Empire existed only in history books. The pound kept falling. In 1940, £1 equaled $4.03. By 1950, $2.80. By 1970, $2.40. By 1980, $2.30. Today, $1.27. The global reserve currency became a regional currency. Britain tried to maintain pretense with a UN Security Council seat, nuclear weapons, and special relationship with America, but everyone knew the truth. The empire was gone and never came back. After World War II, the USSR emerged as a superpower. Nuclear weapons, massive military, control over Eastern Europe, satellites in space. They believed communism would bury capitalism and the Soviet model would dominate. For 45 years, they competed with America, matched us militarily, built more tanks, more missiles, more troops. But beneath the surface, the economy was dying, and the pattern was executing faster than ever. The Soviet Union spent 15 to 20% of GDP on the military. That's triple what America spent. They had to match American technology and reach, but their economy was a fraction of the size. They were in Afghanistan, propping up Cuba, supporting Syria, Vietnam, North Korea, Angola, Ethiopia. Everywhere America had influence, they had to counter. The cost was unsustainable. The Soviet economy stopped growing in the 1970s. Oil revenue kept them afloat, but nothing else worked. Factories produced junk, farms failed, technology fell decades behind. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union was importing grain. A country with some of the best farmland on earth couldn't feed itself. Central planning doesn't work. Innovation dies under control. Nobody produces when there's no incentive. The ruble was never a real currency. It couldn't be exchanged internationally. Even Soviet citizens didn't trust it. They used dollars when they could. The government had to buy foreign goods with gold and oil because nobody wanted rubles. By 1985, oil prices dropped. Soviet gold reserves were depleting. They were running out of real money. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. Eastern Europe left. Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Romania, East Germany, gone in a year. The Soviet government couldn't stop it. They were broke. On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. 900 days from Berlin Wall to complete dissolution. No war, no invasion, just economic implosion. The military couldn't be paid. The government couldn't function. A superpower with 30,000 nuclear weapons collapsed from internal economic failure. The pattern had played out again, faster this time. Now let me show you why you should be paying close attention. The United States is following the exact same pattern, stage by stage. almost like we're reading from the same script. Let me prove it. The United States has over 750 military bases in 80 countries. We have troops in 150 countries. We're committed to defending Europe through NATO, defending Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, fighting in the Middle East, countering China, countering Russia. Our military budget is $850 billion annually, more than the next 10 countries combined, and it's still not enough. We're stretched thin, equipment is aging, recruitment is down, we have commitments we cannot fulfill. If China invades Taiwan, if Russia pushes into NATO territory, if Iran closes the Persian Gulf, we cannot respond to all of it simultaneously. We're overextended, just like Spain, Britain, and the USSR. In 1971, Nixon closed the gold window. The dollar became pure fiat currency backed by nothing but trust. Since 2000, the money supply has increased 400%. Since 2020, we've printed over $6 trillion. The dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1971. We're not mixing copper into silver coins, we're just printing unlimited paper. The mechanism is different, the result is the same. Debasement, inflation, loss of trust. The United States owes $36 trillion. That's 120% of GDP. Interest payments alone are approaching $1 trillion per year. We're spending more on interest than on defense. We run deficits every single year. $1.8 trillion in 2024 in a growing economy during peacetime. We're borrowing to pay interest on previous borrowing. That's the textbook definition of a debt spiral. Spain defaulted 4 times. Britain borrowed until it collapsed. The USSR ran out of money. We're on the same path, deeper in debt than any nation in history. America doesn't make things anymore. We design, finance, and consume, but we don't produce. Our manufacturing base has been gutted and shipped to China, Mexico, Vietnam. We import $800 billion more than we export every single year. We're dependent on foreign supply chains for everything: medicine, electronics, steel, even military components. Just like Spain became dependent on imports while the silver flowed out, we're dependent on imports while dollars flow out. We've hollowed out our industrial base, and when the dollar loses reserve status, we're in serious trouble. We can't produce what we need. We're a service economy built on financial engineering. Trust in institutions is at all-time lows. Congress approval rating, 13%. Trust in media, 32%. Trust in the Supreme Court, 40%. Crime is rising in major cities. Homelessness is exploding. Tent cities in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland. Drug overdoses kill 100,000 Americans every single year. That's more than died in the entire Vietnam War, happening annually. The best and brightest are leaving or checking out. Fertility rates are collapsing. We're at 1.6 children per woman, well below replacement level. Political dysfunction is total. We can't agree on anything, can't fix anything, can't build anything. The signs of decay are everywhere. But everyone pretends it's fine. It's not fine. We've completed 5 of 7 stages. The Soviet Union made it to stage 5 before collapse. So did Britain. We're not at the end yet, but we're deep into the sequence. And stages 6 and 7 are already beginning. This is when allies start diversifying, when trade moves to other currencies, when the dollar comes flooding back home because nobody needs to hold it anymore. And we're seeing the early signs right now in 2025. BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are developing payment alternatives to bypass the dollar. They've invited Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Iran to join. That's 45% of the world's population. China and Russia are already trading in yuan and rubles, not dollars. Saudi Arabia, which has priced oil exclusively in dollars since 1974, just signed agreements to accept yuan for oil sales to China. That's the petrodollar system cracking. Central banks worldwide are buying gold at the fastest pace since 1950. They're diversifying away from dollar reserves. In 2000, the dollar made up 73% of global central bank reserves. Today, it's 58% and falling. The dollar is still dominant, but the trend is clear. The alternatives are being built, and once it reaches critical mass, the shift will be sudden. Sudden implosion. The Soviet Union went from superpower to non-existent in 900 days. Britain lost the empire in 20 years. Spain took longer, but the result was the same. When the reserve currency fails, when the debt becomes mathematically impossible, when the military can't be funded, it doesn't decline gracefully, it collapses, fast, brutal. A currency crisis triggers a debt crisis, which triggers a political crisis. Overnight, the superpower becomes a cautionary tale. The reserve currency becomes a regional currency. The empire becomes a memory. We're accelerating every single stage. Since 2020, we've printed more money than in the previous 200 years combined. We've increased debt faster than ever. We've extended military commitments. We've hollowed out more manufacturing. We've fractured society more deeply. We're not walking the path anymore. We're sprinting. Maybe we have 10 years, maybe 5, maybe less. But the pattern says collapse is coming. And when it comes, it won't be slow. 3 empires followed this pattern: Spain, Britain, the Soviet Union. Each one believed they were exceptional. Each one believed they were different. Each one believed the rules didn't apply to them. They were wrong. Every single time. We're telling ourselves the same lies right now. We're different. We have technology. We have the dollar. We're America. But the pattern doesn't care about exceptionalism. The pattern is mathematical. You cannot spend beyond your means forever. You cannot maintain empire without productive capacity. You cannot debase currency without consequences. You cannot avoid stages 6 and 7 once you've completed 1 through 5. The sequence is locked in. Maybe we'll find a way out. Maybe America can do what Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union couldn't. Maybe we'll reform, rebuild, restore. Maybe this time really is different. But the pattern says otherwise. The math says otherwise. History says we're about to learn the lesson the hard way. If this opened your eyes to where we actually are, subscribe. Because when stages 6 and 7 accelerate, you'll want to understand what's happening and then why. The answers aren't in the future. They're written in the past. And I'll show you exactly where to look.